right. All right. We are ready to go. What's up, everybody? As promised, I'm going to start by showing the clip from a discussion with David Enoch, and then we're going to get back to the Christian Gonzalez stuff. All right. Kamal, you were here early. Modern Moralist, you get 1,000 land salute. Marmotor gets 500, and we'll see who's in for 250. So I've got the video right here, and it's right at about the start where it's going to play. Let's see. All right, let me just change a couple settings. All right, good to go. And let's get right into it.
That you've just articulated runs counter to your, I suppose, moral, I don't want to call it absolutism, but can you explain your philosophical position on ethics? When I make a moral claim like women and men should be treated equally and should have equal ability to lead flourishing lives, whether they are in Palestine or Israel or Afghanistan or Australia, am I asserting a preference? Am I asserting a culturally contingent point of view that could be otherwise had I been born elsewhere and would be just as valid there? Or am I stating something that's embedded in the fabric of the universe somehow?
Yeah, so I'm a strong believer in moral objectivity. I certainly think that what we aim at is full objectivity and necessity,
Yeah, what we aim at. Who is we? Who is we? So once again, you get this. This is extremely common for philosophers to just speak of we without specification, without clarity. Who is we? That's not how I speak. And so I take those claims to not mean much if there isn't something implicitly metaethical about them. And I think it's quite unfortunate. Sorry, metaethical, implicitly empirical about them. Sorry, I was distracted because I got a message. I just turned my phone around so I won't see the text messages popping up. So, this is what we aim at. Because look at what he says. Look at the specific thing that he says.
Yeah, so I'm a strong believer in moral objectivity. I certainly think that what we aim at is full objectivity and necessity. I'm definitely on the extreme side of that kind of discussion.
And not because Israeli society has changed.
Not
because you've always been extreme.
I missed it.
Full objectivity and necessity,
somehow.
Yeah, so I'm a strong believer in moral objectivity. I certainly think that what we aim at is...
See, what we aim at. You see, objectivity, and then what we aim at, who is we, it's not specified. That's a problem.
Is full objectivity and necessity, I'm definitely on the extreme side of that kind of discussion.
And not because Israeli society has changed.
Not
because you've always been extreme.
Exactly. I have and I also think that you are, and I also think that pretty much everyone is. So
slow clap. I think you are, and I think pretty much everyone is. Guess what, David? You have made empirical claims. I think you are. That's an empirical claim. Pretty much everyone is. That's an empirical claim. David claimed in our more recent debate that he does not care about empirical considerations when it comes to these questions. And yet here he is in another discussion with somebody else making unambiguous empirical claims. Now, David, I don't know if he would deny pretty much everyone has these commitments is an empirical claim. If he is denying that, that's absurd because claims about human psychology are empirical claims. If he's not denying that, why is he making this empirical claim? One of the first things he says on the matter is that he thinks we think this way, that the person he's talking to thinks this way, and that pretty much everybody thinks this way. Those are empirical claims. And so I find it quite remarkable and strange and confusing that in our discussion, he was so adamant, almost angry at the suggestion that he is making empirical claims and that those seem relevant to his position. What if it turned out, what if David discovered that his interlocutor is not committed to realism? And as we'll see if we watch a little bit more of this, I don't know if we will, he gives some pushback, the person David's talking to, that they don't think about things this way. They don't deliberate in a realist way. At least they don't think that they do. What if we discovered most people don't think like David? What if it turns out David is weird? What if it turns out he's idiosyncratic and that most people just don't think like realists? Would that be dialectically irrelevant to David's case? Would he literally consider that irrelevant? If so, I'd be curious why. And if it would be irrelevant, why is he here saying most people think this way? Now, if it is it's not that it's directly relevant. It's not, of course, the case that whether realism is true or not turns on whether a majority of people endorse the view or are implicitly committed to it. But it does raise sort of second order or indirect questions about the plausibility of the views. David is big on talking about which views are plausible. If David Enoch and a few academic colleagues and like a small proportion of society were the only people that endorsed David's brand of realism or something similar enough to fall within a similar category, it would start to raise questions. I mean, one, it would be a little bit, to say the least, it'd be a bit of a stretch to call the view common sense. If you have the idiosyncratic view most people don't hold, it's a bit strange to call it common sense. If you have an idiosyncratic view most people don't hold, it starts to raise questions about whether that view is really the product of ordinary reasoning processes. So I think that David is clearly making an empirical claim here. I think that it is in an indirect way relevant to the dialectical space in which David is operating. And then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for David to claim that empirical claims are irrelevant. Now, there might be specific reasons or ways in which reasons why he thinks it's irrelevant in specific contexts, or ways in which the empirical data is irrelevant. And I might even agree with David. But here, I think David, I think we've caught you a little bit red-handed making empirical claims. Let's listen to that again, just to really hammer it home.
I think that.
And not because Israeli society has changed,
not
because you've always been extreme.
Exactly. I have and I also think that you are, and I also think that pretty much everyone is. So I think that
pretty much everyone is. David, I think that's false. I think it's not the case that pretty much everyone is implicitly committed to the objectivity of morality or stance independence about morality or realism, whatever terminology you want to use. I take that to be an empirical question, and I think the empirical evidence suggests that at best, there's little, if any, support to suggest that that's true. And most likely, like the best available evidence suggests that that's false. Like what evidence we do have shows that as the methods used to elicit metaethical responses from people get better, as their validity improves, you get more and more people leaning towards and giving anti-realist responses. Now, does this mean that are we moving directly from, or like one might think, okay, well, we're not just asking people. These studies typically do not just directly ask people whether they endorse realism or not. They use a variety of measures that are intended to be implicit. You could look at Thomas Polzer. He has an IAT test. Now, the IATs have big problems, but the IATs tended to support an anti-realist control. You have the Jordan Thoreau data that I talked about yesterday, which looked at the neural patterns associated with moral judgments and non-moral judgments about non-moral factual matters. And they reliably differ, whereas the moral issues were more associated with subjective value judgments and other domains. So what you get is a converging line of evidence that when you ask people for their views, when you use implicit measures, and when you look at neuroimaging data, all of that data tends to show, at the very least, usually a preponderance of people favoring anti-realist views. But even when it's not a preponderance, it's a lot of people. And so the claim that almost everybody implicitly holds these views, there's just there's just no good reason to think that that's true. So I'm very curious what David would make of this empirical data. Now, if David wants to say, look, he's making an isolated claim about the fact that he thinks most people are committed to this, and that's not directly dialectically relevant to the arguments that he makes for realism, that's totally fine. I'm still saying this specific claim David is making in this specific video is probably false. One, it's an empirical claim. Two, the empirical data does not support the claim. And I'm curious what David would make of that. Now, I'd be very puzzled if he said that empirical data is irrelevant with respect to the specific question of whether the person he's speaking to, or whether most people are in some way, pretty much everyone, he says, implicitly committed to realism in some way. If that's not an empirical question, what is it exactly? How could it not be about people's psychology?
Some relativist confusions are confusions, but also are fairly shallow confusions. I think that in a conversation, you can show people, almost everyone, not everyone, almost everyone, that their deep commitments are inconsistent with these kinds of relativist.
Their deep commitments. These are claims about people's psychology. So David is making the claim that almost all people, through conversation, you could show them that their commitments are inconsistent, like the rest of their commitments are inconsistent with their commitment to relativism or some anti-realist position. Once again, David, I don't know if you'll see this. I think that's false. I don't think you have good evidence for that. And I take that to be a claim about those people's psychology. If you disagree with any of that stuff, I'd love to talk to you again about this and drill down and get at what the disagreement is. Because I was just deeply puzzled in our discussion at your insistence that the empirical matters weren't relevant here. And yet here you are making claims about consistency between people's commitments. Like when I'm considering my commitments, whether my views about A and my views about B are consistent with one another, is that not a question about my state of mind, about like what's going on in my head? And is that not a claim about my psychology? And are statistical claims about the distribution of beliefs, attitudes, or commitments within the general population, is that not a claim about like social psychology? It's a claim about the general attitudes among people. Very similar to if you said something like most people are committed to the existence of God. I think that that's true. But the way that you figure that out is not by using a priori methods. The way you figure that out is like surveys and polls. Now, it might be difficult in the case of metaethics to figure out exactly what people think on the matter. And one may have a view of language where one is trying to get this sort of external read on the functions and features of the way that the language operates that are not introspectively accessible to people in the way that their beliefs about God would be accessible to them. I understand that, but neither I nor anyone else has crudely suggested that the way in which we suggest that you figure out whether a person is committed to moral realism is to ask them, are you a moral realist, yes or no? Or even to explain it to them and then say, here's a philosophical view, do you endorse it or not? That's not, almost nobody has ever done that in the literature. The primary method is the disagreement paradigm, which does not directly ask people about their metaethical views. You have the Zylstra's poll, you have the Collier-Sproul survey. Some of those come closer to directly eliciting questions about people's metaethical stances, but you have other implicit measures. You even have fMRI data. So we have a variety of different tools and methods, and it's not just crudely asking people straightforward questions about their metaethical views. When people have done that, I've been critical of it. There is one paper that asks people whether they think morality is objective, or whether they think there's objectively right answers to moral questions. That's at Fisher et al. 2017. I've criticized that in my work as being a very poor way to figure out what people think, because you know, of all people, like I look at this from a psychological perspective. A person could go around saying, I believe X, I believe X, I believe X, and then they act in a way that reveals a commitment to not X. So a person could say, you know, I'm honest, I'm honest, I'm honest, I'm a very honest person, and they lie all the time, right? So I understand that what people say is not a clear indication of what their underlying commitments are. But this research already acknowledges this and is already attempting to empirically elicit the commitments, not just the beliefs or the attitudes. There's a work from Genevieve Marti that looks at similar research. I believe, was it in epistemology or consciousness? I can't remember. But she looked at work on what she calls metalinguistic intuitions and how they may be a poor guide as to people's linguistic practices. In other words, take a grammar, right? So if you ask people, if you give people a list, like native English speakers, a list of sentences in English, half of them are well-formed and half of them are not. You ask them which sentences are grammatically correct and which ones are not. They're going to do a pretty good job of it. When you ask them to report the rules, like what rule violation, is there a split infinitive or I don't know, whatever it would be, they do quite badly at this unless they have formal training in English grammar, which, I mean, technically people do, but we forget it. I had it. I don't remember it. You know, it's a funny thing because my wife is Brazilian and she had to sort of formally study English during childhood and again as an adult. She has more formal knowledge than a lot of native English speakers. And something similar can be going on with people's philosophical views. People can verbally commit themselves to particular philosophical positions, but then the way that they deliberate or reason or operate in the world really best reveals an implicit commitment to even a contrary, if not simply an alternative philosophical position. And that's totally fine. It's still an empirical question, though, what that person is committed to. Our commitments are as much a feature of our psychology as our beliefs, and they are as much subject to empirical scrutiny as our beliefs. And you know, maybe there was a misunderstanding when we had a discussion about this matter, that I was calling for a particular type of superficial and crude empirical research, and that's not what I'm calling for. So yeah, I hope we can resolve this issue at some point in the future. Let's see if there's a little bit more to listen to here, and then we'll get over to the Christian stuff.
confusions anyway. So I have a paper called Why I'm an Objectivist About Ethics and Why You Are Too. I don't think that your adherence to gender equality is one that you're happy to think of as a fashion choice or as a preferences between two flavors of ice cream, right? These preferences.
I'm clearly not happy to think of it that way, but I'm sure that males in the 50s who were convinced of a much more patriarchal cultural setup were not happy to think of that as
but they were
either.
Clearly not our allies when it comes to gender equality. But that doesn't mean they were wrong about the objectivity of ethics, right? So let me give you an analogy. You can think about, say, two mathematicians who are of different opinions.
They're just going to have a long discussion, and I'm not up for reviewing all of this now. So let's set this aside and let's switch over to the Christian stuff. Let's get into it. And has anybody read Amy Thomason? I don't know how to say her name, unfortunately. Metaethics and the Functions of Moral Language. I just saw that come up on Substack. I had downloaded it a couple weeks ago, and it's on the queue list. Maybe I should bump it to the top because they seem to really like it. So if anyone's read that, I'll go check it out. I've generally liked her work. So it's should be a higher priority to read it, especially because it talks about the functions of moral language, like right in the title. So I think I read the abstract. I don't remember what's in it. So I got to have a look at that. That sounds like it's going to be good. Again, it's a paper called Metaethics and the Functions of Moral Language. And it just looked really promising, and it's been in the read queue. I got a bunch of intuition stuff I got to read. Okay, so let's switch over to the Christian stuff.
I try and make these videos easily understandable for a general audience, but this one I'm just gonna riff with the jargon and everything. So one thing that really bothers me about moral realism and the debates in metaethics is that while I do think it is possible that moral realism is true, I don't think I've ever seen someone explain what grounds moral facts. Like most of the philosophers I've come across are saying things like, okay, they're objective moral facts. You can know them via your intuition. They're undeniable for anyone thinking clearly in like ideal epistemic scenario. And but there's no metaphysics as a result of that. There are no ontological commitments. We have to. There's no new objects with intrusion to our ontology. And I'm just like, this is Parfit and Scanlon are the names. I'm just like, how do you get off on just saying that? I mean, for me, the correspondence theory of truth makes the most sense. That's not my area of specialty, but if what makes the sentence "the cup is on the table" is grounded in a correspondence with some part of reality, surely if there are moral facts and they're objective, there needs to be some part of reality that they correspond to. That would be an ontology. It's not a surprise that mathematical Platonism is one of the dominant options in the philosophy of math. It's because it's like truth seems to be about correspondence between statements and like some part of reality, physical or mathematical or metaphysical, some part of reality. And if we believe in the correspondence theory of truth, then what the hell do moral statements correspond to? And I can only think of a few options. The first is valence of consciousness. So like the positive or negative paint of coat that almost all experience comes with. And there may be patterns about what that's like, and maybe motivational draws towards bringing about positive states of valence. And there could be objective facts about that. That's like level one. Level two would be something like the nature of agency. So it's like a Kantian approach where something about agency means you have to follow principles, something like that. We could get some juice out of that. And the third level would be like game theory. There's coordination, solutions, there's Nash equilibria. These are types of reality I think that flex the ground out. Things that
Is there Grimes music playing in the background? Did I hear that? Anyway.
That potential moral facts would point at.
Yeah, so it sounds like says yes. That's weird. And isn't that a copyright violation? I might even have to clip this out of my video. Or was it in the previous ones? Crap. Why is he doing that? Is he allowed to do that? I don't know what the rules are on that. I want to follow rules. So I'm sorry, Grimes. I love your music. I very faintly hear it, and I recognize it there. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. What is that Grimes song? There's one that I really like. It's like Angels something. I'm going to look it up because why not? It's live stream. I don't have to only talk about philosophy to talk about music. Oh, what the heck? I don't have Spotify on my computer. Oh, I remember. It kept giving me these pop-ups. Anyway, whatever. I'll deal with it later. But yeah, Grimes is great. So someone asked, is it the dominant view? I don't think he said it's like the most prominent view. I think he said it's like one of the dominant. Yeah, I don't think he implied that Platonism is a view everybody held. Let me look it up. Mathematical Platonism specifically. So we get Platonism about abstract objects is at 38.38%. It's funny. I don't see Platonism about anything else on here. So I don't know if they asked about that. Maybe it's in the additional questions. Where are those? Main survey results. And I don't see the second. They asked a variety of other questions. I don't see them here. Yeah, I don't have the data on what proportion of philosophers endorse mathematical Platonism. Anyway, so Christian here is talking about like the minimal realist accounts that want to deflate its ontological commitments, and he's basically appealing to the correspondence theory and saying, look, if there are moral facts, they have to correspond to something, and that's somehow supposed to be an issue for these deflationary views. I don't endorse the correspondence theory, but I share Christian's, I don't know if it's befuddlement or opposition. I don't find those accounts satisfactory at all. The Scanlon and Parfit type stuff. I find it to, if anything, make moral realism even more mysterious. And so, on the one hand, it can get around Mackey's like queerness objections. On the other hand, I think it just trades one problem for an even bigger one. So somehow you have these facts, but they don't commit one to anything. They don't have any specific ontology. You'd think as a pragmatist, I might be happy with that. But I think that what ends up happening with Parfit and, I don't know enough about Scanlon's views. I've read more of the Parfit stuff. Is just a stripping away of all the content until you have these concepts that they don't have any substance to them. And, this is something that philosophers will sometimes do, is in response to objections, they'll just strip things away until there's nothing left but empty words. And I think that is what has happened with the Parfitian and Scanlonian accounts. I just don't think they have any content. I think it's your standard type of analytic stuff, using a bunch of words and not really referencing any real phenomena. So this is a case where I think I'm inclined to agree with Christian, probably coming at it from a different angle, though. So I wouldn't appeal to correspondence theory because I reject correspondence theory. True. It's funny, like Christian seems to me to take the wrong position in almost every major philosophical issue. But in this case, I think it's allowed him to recognize something unsatisfactory about the Parfit account. Okay. I guess those were probably playing in the videos yesterday and I didn't notice. Part of the reason is because I have a pretty loud white noise because of my tinnitus. All right, next one.
Morality is fake. How could you even argue against the nihilist? Simple, by reminding you don't actually believe that. What if I think all of morality is fake? How could you even argue against the nihilist? Simple, by reminding you don't actually believe that.
Yeah, I really don't like, again, it's funny because he's like, it's ironic, Lance would complain about rhetoric. It's pretty bad rhetoric to say that you don't like to, first of all, to start off, presenting an opposing view in a mocking voice, like, oh, what if I believe this? I mean, it's like something like, it's childish, honestly, and not a particularly good way to present things. And, if your goal is to educate people, mocking your opposition by adopting a satirical, stupid voice for them is not a good way to present a view. It really isn't a good way to present a view. Oh, see, it's awful. Ugh. I bet I've done that before. I'm cringing at myself for I know that I must have done that before. Does he have a philosophy necklace? Ugh. Okay. And I don't know what that is. Isn't it like a stupid Greek symbol? But I don't know if it's supposed to represent something in particular. In any case, whatever. Right. But then the other thing I don't like is the rhetoric of saying you don't actually believe that. I think that's a little presumptuous. I think it's condescending. I don't think it's cool to tell people that they don't believe what they say that they believe. I would hate that if somebody did that to me. I do hate it when people do that to me. You don't believe that. It reminds me very much of Christians that are like, you don't really reject God, or you don't really think that. There's something, again, like I said, condescending and presumptuous and a bit rude about a person interacting with people and saying people that claim to disagree with me don't really disagree with me. So they're just a bunch of dishonest or confused idiots. I mean, that's the implication. It's not a flattering implication about other people. So I don't like it. Yeah, phi, right? Phi. Jesus Christ. I'm going to get my degree taken away for not recognizing it as phi, of course. I hate that formalism stuff, though. So when people say, like, take an object phi or something like that, and they throw that into a paper, it's so awful. But yeah, I get those embarrassing brain farts, but I'm doing live, so they're going to happen in real time. What was it yesterday? I couldn't even construct like a modus ponens or something. I think I was trying to make a modus tollens argument, and I just couldn't do it in real time. I don't know what it is. My brain gets locked up. I can't spell. I can't think straight on certain sorts of things. You get stuck in this like run of thinking, and certain kinds of formalisms just exit my brain, and they're in there somewhere. They're in some file in some folder that I've tucked away, and I just don't know where it is. Yeah, real. Real Sabib says, Lance, you're so close to roasting him for his necklace. Just do it. I'm not going to roast him for his necklace. Nah, I personally, that wouldn't be my style. To like signal, look at me, I'm into philosophy. But I don't really see something. I think it should be acceptable to do that. You know, people are so quick to say everything is cringe, but if somebody likes something, and they're into it, what's wrong with them choosing a symbol to represent it? Nah, I'm gonna say that I like that. I like that he has that. It's again not my style, but what the hell is my style? My style is having unkempt facial hair and goofy glasses that I wear for comfort and not for style, and old weathered t-shirts and no jewelry. That what kind of style is that? I don't have a style. I don't know how to dress. So nah, I'm the problem here, not him. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. And I'm being serious about that. So no, I'm not going to roast him for that. Not at all. And I think part of me was inclined to, and I think that was mean-spirited and stupid. All right. At Hean says, I get why they do that insofar as I think nihilism somehow precludes self-interest, but that's not what the stance is understood to mean in modern philosophy. Nihilism precludes self-interest? Why would it preclude self-interest? So Hean says, you should start wearing a robe like Socrates to show you're into philosophy. I actually have one. I had a costume designer custom make me a Greek chiton, like the one where it like locks one of your arms into it. They even sewed pockets into it. It was really useful. And a friend and I used to walk around Boston in the Greek robes. I don't remember if we were barefoot or not, because if we went on the tee barefoot, that's pretty nasty. Maybe I wore sandals. And we would just talk to people on the street about philosophy. I called it Socratizing, and I still have the robe. It's in storage somewhere. I haven't worn it in a long time. Now that I have a serious job, I don't know how kindly they would look on me dressing up in a robe. So, it would be profoundly hypocritical for me to take issue with somebody having a phi symbol necklace when I went around in Greek robes and still have them. So no, I think people should have fun with this stuff. I think memes are cool. I think if you want to wear like a Nietzsche t-shirt, I think that's cool. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. More people should do it. I think what happened is I noticed something about him, and in some small part of me is annoyed at him for blocking me and publicly saying critical things about me. And I think there was a bit of a vengeful motivation that bubbled up in me to say something rude. And on reflection, I have no basis for it. And it's just stupid and petty. So that happened real time. And I didn't even immediately recognize it as phi. So how embarrassing is that? So we got two embarrassing things. One, some bad part of my character bubbles up. And then two, something that reveals my ignorance of philosophy. Now, of course, it's not actually the case that I haven't seen phi symbols or used them before, or even like written out phi, like PHI before. It's not like I haven't done this stuff. I would never use that in my writing now. But it's the sort of thing you would encounter as an undergrad or when you're reading like more old school analytic philosophy or traditional analytic philosophy. So it's certainly something I have encountered, but you get these brain farts when you're in lives. And, one thing I could do when I'm in a live is pretend to know more than I do, or to not make little gaffes or screw ups. And I don't think people should do that. I think people should put everything out. And if you screw things up, you screw them up. And that's just how it is. I couldn't remember how to say Jit's name, even though he's, he threw money at me. Maybe now I'll remember because of that. But no, he's always been there. He's been here for what, 2-3 years commenting on videos. It's been a long time. And I really appreciate that. So Kamal asked, did he block you? Yes, he did. And I still don't know why. Maybe I did some jerky thing. I get moody sometimes and I get rude with people. So a lot of the times though, I'm like calmly typing on my computer and someone's like, "You sound so aggressive," and I'm like, "What? I didn't say anything aggressive. I don't sugarcoat stuff." But you'll see when I talk to people, like, look, I had a conversation with Mike Humer. What did I come off like rah, in that conversation? Not at all. Not at all. So I think some of it just is the way that people construe like written stuff, but I don't know. Anyway, I should get more into the video.
See, all too often in philosophical debates, people invent these like hypothetical mass skeptics and say, well, what can you say to that person? These people actually rarely exist. See, philosophical argument is about you and an interlocutor, you and yourself. You're trying to convince you or someone else from your actual starting point, not from some imagined place of mass skepticism. Now, there are some nihilists, but what I'm going to argue in this video is you're probably not one of them. Because if you're a nihilist, you are committed to saying murder's not wrong, genocide's not wrong, whatever was.
First, I mean, so a few things. One is he's telling people what they are in a presumptuous and condescending way. He starts off by mocking them. Third, it's why is he using the term nihilism? So nihilism is sometimes used to refer to error theory. Sometimes it's used to refer to both error theory and non-cognitivist accounts because both deny their moral truths. But why use that term? Why not use a term like error theory? Nihilism carries these negative connotations. So there's three ways in which he's employing rhetoric here. He's using a mocking tone. He's trying to basically browbeat his audience. So you're not really what you say you are, or you're probably not what you say you are. I don't like that. And then the third is the choice to use the term nihilism. There's not a good reason to use that term. That term is inherently rhetorical due to its associations. So he shouldn't be doing any of that. And then this stuff like you can't think these things are wrong. The nihilist thinks that two things, if they're an error theorist, is that one, that they think that technically when we speak of things being wrong, that people are committed to stance independence and that nothing is stance independently wrong. It'd be more accurate to say that they don't think anything is stance independently wrong. Now, you could say, well, they don't think anything is wrong. The problem is that carries misleading pragmatic connotations about the person's normative standards. And nihilists can and do have values, preferences, attitudes. They could have ones that are functionally identical to the realist. So this is normative entanglement. He's implying that the nihilist can't care about things or have values and couldn't be opposed to murder or whatever. And none of that is true.
Going on Epstein's Island, not wrong. And you don't actually believe that. Now, it's possible that you do. But do you really? And this is where we get to the heart of philosophy. We get to a certain level of education, philosophy. They pull you off into a dark room, they close the curtains, and in a hushed tone, they tell you, the point of philosophy was never truth. The point of philosophy was never wisdom. All that philosophy can ever do is to try and get all of the things you believe and intuit to maximally cohere as much as possible. And the second two things contradict, you have to face both them in the eyes and figure out which one seems more likely to you.
Yeah, so I know he's being a little funny here by saying they pull you aside. No one pulled me aside to say that. Like, that's not the impression one would get. No, we care about truth. I don't just care about internal coherence. I'm after truth.
That's all it is. So this argument against nihilism is just trying to remind you, you do have some evaluative beliefs on one hand, and you do have maybe the suspicion that nihilism is correct on the other hand, and you're just trying to see which one seems more likely to you. But also, like most nihilists,
why not both? You could just have both. It's not a problem, and there's no inconsistency. So if it turned out, let's take a hypothetical. Suppose it turned out that the vast majority of people throughout history presupposed gastronomic realism. In other words, when they said this chocolate tastes good or this pizza tastes good, they presumed that there were stance-independent facts about what food tastes good or bad that are true independent of anybody's actual taste preferences. Okay. What that would ultimately entail is that ordinary gastronomic language is committed to gastronomic realism. Well, gastronomic realism, let's assume it's false. I think it is, or at least it's not true. Okay, so supposing it's false, what that would mean is that you now have to be a gastronomic error theorist. Would it follow from this that you can't have evaluative attitudes towards food? You can't prefer some food over others? That you would be irrational if you preferred food that tasted good to you over food that tasted bad? No, none of that would follow. All that would follow is that a particular language or a particular mode of discourse was mistaken. That's it. Likewise, All nihilism, he seems to be using it to refer to error theory, commits you to, is something like English speakers, maybe speakers of some other language, are systematically in error when they talk. It has zero practical implications beyond that. Literally zero. Literally zero. You can say and do anything you want, provided that you explicitly acknowledge that the ordinary English speaker, when they say murder is wrong, that's technically false. That's the only implication. It has nothing to do with your attitudes. It has nothing to do with your behavior. It has nothing to do with your evaluative standards. Nothing to do with any of that. It's a view about the relation between a particular language or set of languages and the metaphysical claims made by that language. That's all. It's utterly trivial. I'm not saying that the view is necessarily wrong. What I'm saying is that from a practical standpoint, endorsing error theory, or nihilism as he's using the term here, just doesn't carry any significant practical implications. Maybe one would be that you might want to modify how you speak, but probably not. Because if you recognize in a technical sense that ordinary language is mistaken in some respect, you could still be a fictionalist. You could still say, all right, well, it's technically wrong, but the functional analog gets the same things done pragmatically in everyday language. So I'm just going to speak the same way that I always did. And I think that's perfectly appropriate for error theorists to do. And they don't even have to change how they speak. You know, they would have to change how they speak in like specific academic contexts, which are not practically relevant to everyday life. That's it. So the practical implications of error theory is that you might have to say, I'm an error theorist at a philosophy conference. Like, that's about it. It's not really anything else that follows from it. It has nothing to do with how you handle the Holocaust. It has nothing to do with any of that. So, you know, the metaethics, it's so abstracted away from practically relevant considerations. I don't know why critics of these views think that they're going to squeeze so much of a critique out of their objections to these views, because there really aren't any.
Are committing performative contradictions all the time. The second politics gets brought up, all of a sudden these mass skeptics have very strong opinions about right and wrong. And so that's it. That's the simplest argument.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having very strong opinions or positions on what's right or wrong. You could think that, you know, if you say, oh, but technically you don't think anything is right or wrong. Okay, they think that they're right with an asterisk and wrong with an asterisk. They're right, but without the stance independent part. What? So what? So again, if it turned out ordinary people were committed to gastronomic realism, are you somehow just, there's no possible way for you to meaningfully speak about food being good or bad, because what other people mean when they say it's good or bad is that it stands independently good or bad. You just can't say stuff like, I like this food and I dislike that food, and I'm going to say good or bad to refer to what I like and dislike. You just can't do it. Like an error theorist could just can be a conceptual engineering proponent and propose that we speak like subjectivists. You know, like they could just do that. That's not a problem. It's really frustrating that people think that they've got these gotchas against these views, and they don't really have anything.
Against nihilism. Now there's others, but the reason I wanted to focus on this one is because this series is based on ethical intuitionism by Michael Huemer. And I'm arguing for objective morality by going through all 5 possible explanations of morality, showing that the first 4 are wrong, and therefore you are forced to conclude that objective morality is correct.
Yeah, well, it's a bad style of argument. All right, let's look at the next one. Every time I reshare these, it defaults it back to the big version. You see how it does this? And then I have to turn it little. Why does it do that? StreamYard, figure that out. Keep my default setting.
It's time for the actual argument.
And also, TikTok is, first of all, why is it blue? Shouldn't be blue.
Right in. All right, it's time. Time for the actual argument for objective morality.
Why is it doing that? I don't want the whole interface. Give me a second. Where's the video?
We're gonna jump right.
And TikTok is defaulting to, oh no, it kept the default. See, look at that. You see how it kept it on the maximum default? See, TikTok's got it figured out. Okay, guys, let's keep going.
All right, it's time. Time for the actual argument for objective morality. We're gonna jump right in and go premise by premise. Ready? Premise 1, evaluative statements can be true or false. In other words, non-cognitivism is false. This was video 1. Premise 2, not all of these statements are false. At least some of them are true. In other words, nihilism is false. This was video 4. Number 3, the truth of an evaluative statement is not subjective. In other words, subjectivism or moral relativism is false. This was video 2. Premise 4. Evaluative statements cannot be reduced to just description.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a problem with the third premise, which is that it rules out indexicality, but not stance dependence. So that's already a problem. Let's just assume and be charitable and assume that these are specifically stance dependent accounts.
Of the world. In other words, naturalism is false. This was video 3. Now, from these points, it follows that 5. Some evaluative statements are true. This follows from premise 1 and 2. Number 6. Some evaluative statements are objectively true. This follows from 3 and 5. And from all of this, we can conclude 7. There are irreducible, objective, evaluative facts which cannot be known on the...
Yeah, this is easy to reject. So you just reject the third premise. So the third premise, the truth of an evaluative statement is not subjective or relative. Subjectivism is false. The issue with that would be that the only way for that to work is if that entailed that the truth of evaluative statements isn't stance dependent, that it stands independent, and I would just reject that. If you give a naturalist account, then you might be able to make those true, but then they're not going to be irreducibly normative. At least I wouldn't think that they could be. So you're going to either reject premise 3 or 4. Pretty easy. Not a good argument. I mean, this is just a repackaging of what realism is as a view. It's not, this has no force as an argument. These types of arguments are always toothless. They're always just repackagings of the conclusion in various ways. So this doesn't get you anything.
4 and 6. Now, this conclusion is a description of what's called ethical intuitionism. This is the moral theory that says there are objective moral facts, and you can know them via your intuition. That doesn't mean all intuitions are created.
Yeah, look at that. This is such a bad way of framing it. Does this say anything about intuitions up in the top? No. So calling it ethical intuitionism at the end is misleading and not a good way to do it. What he's shown here is something like non-naturalist moral realism. Why not call it that? Now, Humer might prefer to call it ethical intuitionism, but then that, and and he's even saying, "Oh, you know it through intuition." That's then baking in an epistemic feature of it that wouldn't be necessary for the position, and that isn't anywhere in these premises. So that doesn't necessarily give you ethical intuitionism, because nothing in the premises he presented said anything about the epistemology. It didn't say anything about how you acquire the knowledge through intuition. So why would you define non-naturalist realism in terms of the method of epistemic access you have to the facts rather than the nature of the facts themselves? All of these premises are about the nature of the facts. They're not about the epistemology. It's not a good way to frame things. It should not be called ethical intuitionism. Ethical intuitionism should be the conjunction of non-naturalist realism and a specific epistemological approach towards how one acquires knowledge of the stance independent moral facts. So, to invoke William Lane Craig, they're conflating metaphysics and epistemology. So why do that? There's no reason to do that. I mean, it's a minor mistake. It's not a big deal, but why?
Are objectively true. This follows from 3 and 5. And from all of this, we can conclude 7. There are irreducible, objective, evaluative facts which cannot be known on the basis of observation. This follows from 4 and 6. Now, this conclusion is a description of what's called ethical intuitionism. This is the moral theory that says there are objective moral facts, and you can know them via your intuition. That doesn't mean all intuitions are created equal. Of course, you want to deliberate, make sure that there's no biases in question, cross-reference with other people, etc., etc. Now, that's the high-level positive argument for objective morality based on intuition. But of course,
it's not a high-level argument. So it's an incredible Craig impression. I'll give it to Matthew Adelstein. He does a much better impression than I do. Ian says jump scare at WLC impression.
You might have a few questions. The most important question is, if we can't know these moral facts by observation, how the hell can we even know them? And that question we're going to answer in the next video.
All right. Let's go to the next one. Okay, fine, Sapir. You just want me to say something again in a bad William Lane Craig voices. They're conflating ontology and epistemology. My favorite is the way he says certain words. He has a distinctive way of saying things. I think he says, instead of saying pleasure, he says pleasure. And I gotta say, like, I disagree with William Lane Craig on a lot of stuff, but he's delightful to listen to. I like his voice. I like his his slow cadence when he's speaking. I really enjoyed like listening to him. He should do ASMR or something because he's just a great speaker. All right. Kamal says, I remember the Craig debate with Sam Harris. After all the stuff, Harris ended by saying you're conflating metaphysics with epistemology. Did he say metaphysics? Okay. Maybe he did. Man, that Harris did horrible in that debate. That was embarrassing. I felt bad for Harris that time. Why did you feel bad for Harris? This is good. Logically and inescapably. Yeah, Craig is great. I enjoy listening to him. I mean, I don't know that I agree with him on anything, but he's fun to listen to. All right, next video. Man, there's so many of these.
All right, let's say there's objective morality. How the hell are we supposed to know any of these facts if we can't observe them in the universe? Well, one possible way depends on a principle that underlies all forms of knowledge that you don't know about. This is the principle of phenomenal conservatism.
Called it.
Let me explain. Just a heads up. This is going to be a little dense, but if you're watching this, you're smart and you can keep up. Phenomenal conservatism states that all else equal, it's reasonable to assume that things are basically how they appear. Does this mean you should believe all initial appearances? No, of course not. We're wrong all the time. Consider this illusion. Now, initially, it appears like these lines are of different lengths. But if you take out a ruler, you find, no, the initial appearance was wrong. And so you end up believing that the lines are of the same length. But you only believe this because it appears to be the case that when a ruler tells you two things are of the same length, they're of the same length. It's still just an appearance. And so what you always end up doing is believing the thing that most appears to be true. It doesn't mean all appearances are true. You weigh one appearance versus another. You take into account various beliefs. But at the end of the day, you still just believe what most appears to be true once you factor all that in. Got it? Now, appearances aren't just empirical the way that they are in science. This also applies to logic. If you're presented with an argument, you can just see intellectually.
No, you can't. No one can see intellectually. So I don't accept this second part. Nope, it's all empirical. There are visual appearances. There's percepts. There's perceptions. I don't believe in these intellectual seemings. I don't think this is a real thing. Now, sometimes people interpret that as me saying, I don't have them. No, I'm saying, given my knowledge of psychology, because that's a topic I study, and, you know, there's a very little reason on theoretical grounds to posit that people have some sensorial analog, intellectual analog to sensation, where they can like detect non-empirical truth. There's no evidence of that. There's no good theoretical reason to believe that that's an ability that people have. You know, it's easy to do this kind of piggybacking thing where you say, look, we have visual appearances or seemings. We have auditory appearances or seemings. And we have intellectual appearances or seemings. No, we don't. We have beliefs. We have attitudes. We have all kinds of psychology going on. But in all of those cases, take a visual perception. What actually is involved in visual perception? Well, you have eyes, or you need some analog. What do they actually do? Eyes actually they have photoreceptors in them, and they're taking in light and they're converting it into electrochemical signals that are then processed in the occipital lobe and some other parts of the brain. And eventually that it resolves itself into visual information about the external world. Notice that they require input from the world, physical input from the world, in order to function. You cannot see without eyes. And or some, again, always in these cases, think of functional analogs. Like a machine wouldn't have to have an eye. It could have something else for visual perception. But in those cases, what you have is a dynamic interaction between the human body itself and your mind inhabiting that body in metaphorical sense, and the physical world around you. Olfaction, proprioception, and physical sensation. All of them are like this. All of them are because you have nerves that pick up physical information. Olfaction, you have little particles, and they interact with receptors in this process in certain sorts of ways. So in all of these cases, perception involves an interaction with the world around you. Intellectual appearances don't engage with the world around you, and they don't engage with the Platonic realm. They don't engage with anything other than other stuff inside of the mind. And so they are at best only the rearrangement of information or thoughts or patterns of cognitive states that are already available to you They're unable to detect things in the way that percepts are. So, you know, calling them appearances, I think, is very misleading. And second, you know, I can speak for myself in this respect, and I do think that this is probably how it is for most other people. If I consider something like 2 + 2 = 4, I would think it's a misdescription to say that, so like, okay, it seems to me, or it appears that I'm holding a cup, right? Okay, now does it appear to me that 2 + 2 = 4? No, I think that 2 + 2 = 4, or I remember that 2 + 2 = 4, or I believe that 2 + 2 = 4. Thinking, believing, and remembering are not the same thing as seemings. So I think that humor and others import this claim to a special type of phenomenology. Now, I don't have that phenomenology. I don't think that most people do. And, you know, part of the issue that I have is, even if they do have a phenomenology, and I don't have any particularly good reason to insist they don't actually have phenomenology, the question is what's causing it. Because we actually have an empirical story to tell about what causes visual phenomenology. Visual perception, eyes, the optic nerve, the occipital lobe. In all of these cases, we can get external corroborating evidence about what causes the type of seeming or appearance. What do we have for intellectual seemings? Nothing. We have absolutely nothing. There is no evidence that we have such a capacity. There's no evidence that it's picking up on features of the world, physical or otherwise. So what we have are reports of some type of phenomenology associated with an inclination to believe or an intuition or something like that. But this is not this type of account that humor gives is pseudo-psychological. It is not a feature of contemporary cognitive psychology. We don't have any accounts of what these systems are or how they work or what distinguishes them from other systems. This is, I mean, I could say at best armchair psychology. It's highly, highly speculative and grossly, almost comically underdeveloped. Humor is making psychological claims effectively. And those claims have not been corroborated or vindicated or supported in any way by contemporary cognitive science to any significant extent. I think I found one paper that tries to look at this, and I didn't find it very convincing. And it wasn't empirical anyway. So a lot of this language, this loose language of seemings and appearances, I think smuggles in a lot of rationalist and anti-empiricist assumptions that I don't think any of us are obliged to accept, that I don't think that Christian or humor have particularly compelling arguments for. Even if they had compelling arguments for, like, those aren't something to just jump over and ignore. We would need to have that discussion. But this stuff about seemings and appearances, I think it's doing a lot of weaselly work here. Again, I don't think it's intentional, but something's off about this kind of discourse. You know, suppose, well, I'm not going to get into that now. So never mind the thought I was about to follow up on. But I think we should be extremely cautious and extremely skeptical of this talk of seemings and appearances. I don't have them, and if other people have them, I want to see the evidence for it, because we have very good evidence that people can see and hear and smell. So what's the evidence that people have intellectual seemings? Self-report is not good enough. If self-report was good enough, people all over the world, I could get you the data on this right now. We could pull up the Pew and the Gallup polls. People report having supernatural experiences. People report seeing and speaking to dead loved ones or their dead pets. People report hearing voices, interacting with God or supernatural beings. People report precognition, clairvoyance, clairaudience, all types of telepathic and ESP powers. If the self-report was sufficient to establish the existence of the phenomena, then telepathy would exist. Now, telepathy doesn't exist, and the reason we don't think it exists is because efforts to provide independent third-party or an external corroboration has reliably failed. So what is the evidence that people have intellectual seemings? I would expect there to be evidence for it. Now, if someone constructs it in a way where it's impervious to this type of testing, they could argue that I'm begging the question against non-empiricist rationalist views by requiring them to meet an empiricist standard that they can't meet. But if they're going to lay claim to these a prioristic approaches that are fundamentally inaccessible to the empirical sciences, I'm going to accuse them of question begging and presupposing that they have access to special kinds of knowledge that don't fall within the scope of empiricism. So this cuts both ways. It's a two-way street, and none of us are obliged to just grant the rationalist presuppositions that humor is ultimately operating with. And humor is a rationalist. In his blog, I've just found it really unsatisfactory. And I know humor sometimes reposts my on Twitter these reviews, but I'm not directly reviewing him here, so I don't know if he'll see this. But, he'll just say it's obvious. Well, I find it, if anything, either not obvious or obviously otherwise. So what do we do then? Because like I don't have humor's intuitions. So whatever system he has for determining these a priori truths, I reliably judge contrary wise. So what now? What? I don't think there's a good method for resolving that, and I think that that's a serious problem. Jeremy Gord says people even report having vision-like experiences when closing their eyes and imagining things. How bizarre. Yeah, they do. And there are good empirical explanations for that. And we could do research on that. Mental imagery is something that can be studied. And we've even looked at the neuroimaging differences between people that have like aphantasia and that sort of thing. And yeah, this is all stuff that's amenable to empirical inquiry, unlike intellectual seemings, which either haven't been or are incapable of being studied in the same way, which I think should make us suspicious about them. He says, do you think it could be a mistaken awareness of subconscious reasoning? Yes, I think it. I think that certain kinds of affective or other cognitive content is being misinterpreted as like having as truth tingles or this like truthy feeling, when really people are just recalling beliefs and that sort of thing. I think something psychologically rather mundane is going on, and it's not the sort of thing that can play the evidential roles that humor puts it to. Yeah. How do you know that? I saw it intellectually. Notice the language that Christian used here that you see things intellectually. That's so bizarre. No one can see things intellectually. So is that a metaphor? Because if it's a metaphor, what is it a metaphor for? Like what capacity is actually going on if it's not literally that? And if it's literal, that's a bigger problem. So if it's literal, I mean, that's really just outrageous. If it's metaphorical, then what? When you peel away the metaphor, what is actually going on? Yeah. Says this sounds like fancy ESP. I think that is what it is. Yes. So as I cannot tell a practical difference between what Humor and Christian are reporting here and people that claim to have paranormal powers. I don't know what the difference is supposed to be. So I mean, they have some special faculty that hasn't been vindicated by the empirical sciences and may not be amenable to empirical scrutiny, that provides them with a special kind of knowledge of non-empirical facts. That sounds like magic. And what would distinguish that from magic? How is that not magic? What's the difference? Yeah. Interesting comments here. Hume continues, like something seems true to me because your brain did the probability calculations in the background before you became cognizant of it, because I could definitely test having an early intuition about the veracity of a claim prior to thinking about it analytically, and I could see that being what they're referring to. Yeah, that could be something going on. So, we have different types of memory. So we have semantic memory and episodic memory. Who was the first president of the United States? Many of you listening will know that it was George Washington. Where specifically were you, and what were the circumstances in which you initially learned that? Now, you might have a memory about that. It might be a false memory. I mean, I guess it probably would be, but many of you will recognize you don't remember exactly where you learned that. And the same would be true of many of the other things that you learned. So semantic memory would be like just straightforward, like knowledge, like who the president was, or like trivia type facts. And then episodic memory would be memory of like prior experiences. Like I remember us going to the mall last week, something like that. So you have these different kinds of memory, and they can become unmoored from one another. You can reason or think about things. The unconscious processing or thoughts can occur that prompt you to develop a particular belief, and you don't remember that, but you now have the belief. And part of what could be going on is that prior experience, which could be subsumed by an empiricist account, can account for how a person came to internalize a particular attitude, stance, or position on a given matter, which is subsequently prompted or elicited from them in a way where it's not associated with any special sense of like inference or anything like that. So, if you ask me what's 7 times 7, I'm going to 49, like right away, immediately. Now, what's actually happening there? It's some type of recall. I just remember that. It's something I memorized. But it bubbles up from my unconscious in a way where I didn't have to consciously reason about it. And so I may think, if I have a reaction to a thought experiment where I'm like, I think the answer is yes, or I think you do survive teletransportation or something like that, because that's not associated on consideration with any explicit conscious mental reasoning process, a person may find themselves inclined to think that this sudden disposition they have to say yes or no is some sort of special ability to detect what's true about the scenario, when really what they're doing is eliciting something about their own psychology, which is built up largely on the basis of making present judgments on the basis of prior experience. And so what's going on there could be something utterly mundane, and not at all some special capacity for detecting truth. It's just the prior accretion of dispositions to judge in accordance with particular background principles, experiences, judgments, and attitudes that one has built up over their lifetime up until the point of making the judgment. And nothing about that would necessarily be tapping in to some empirically, like something outside the scope of the empirical sciences, or outside the scope of human perception or sensation or discoverability through the natural sciences. Really just what's happening is human brains are wired to take in information, to use that information to predict future experiences and to coordinate behavior. And your judgments in novel scenarios are built up on the basis of that. And that doesn't always require conscious inference. I don't think anything special is going on. And I don't see any reason to think that people have some special truth detecting ability. They have an ability to tap into their psychology, which has accumulated a tendency to react to different scenario situations and processes and experiences in ways based on one's personality and prior experiences and all the things that came before. So I think these intuitions are just due to prior tuning, in other words, and that they're not and so they're always going to be contingent on the particular experiences and psychological idiosyncrasies of the particular agent making the judgment. We don't have some trans psychological capacity to detect a priori truths. I just don't think we have that ability. It's all based on prior experience, all of it, whether it be culturally acquired or based on, inborn features of a person's personality, something like that. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, so people say stuff like this. Even your interpretations of scientific evidence depend on your seemings. No, they don't. So they depend on my perceptions, my beliefs, my commitments, my attitudes, my goals, my desires. There's no seemings involved at all. So this notion that, because humor will say it's self-defeating to deny seemings. No, it's not. I totally deny that I or anyone else has ever even had a seeming. It's not that we have them, but I don't think we need them. I literally think that this isn't a real feature of human psychology. Now, when seeming is used broadly to encompass perception, obviously I think perception exists. I'm specifically saying I don't think intellectual seemings are a real type of psychological state. I think to the extent that humor and others report having intellectual seemings, it's a bit like people that report seeing auras or hearing voices or something like that. They're misinterpreting their experience. So they have a theoretical account of what's going on with their phenomenology or their psychology, and that account is wrong. So there is real stuff going on with their psychology. Apparently it's not going on with me, but they're just misinterpreting it. So I don't think that the psychological states he thinks are necessary are even real states at all, much less necessary states. And I'm 100% serious about that. I'm not saying philosophy doesn't require intellectual seemings. I'm saying there's no such thing as an intellectual seeming. So it certainly isn't a requirement. Why not smell intellectually? Digital Gnosis says ocular metaphors and their role are explored a lot and deconstructed, going back to Greek philosophy and the philosophy of the mirror in nature. Cool. This is a funny point. Jeremy Gord says dog philosophers would probably use that metaphor, like what, that we smell the truth or something. I think that they would, and I think that's a little bit telling. Sabir says I taste things intellectually. Intellectual notes of cherry from Matt Springfield. Intellectual interoception. Matthias says, same problem I have with Plantinga's sensus divinitatis. Yeah, I don't see much of a difference from what humor is reporting from a sensus divinitatis, other than it doesn't have the divinitatis part. I mean, you could call it like a sensus a priorius or something. I mean, you could just come up with some Latinized silly name. But like these claims that people have special faculties for truth detection. Yeah, okay, prove it. I don't believe them. Digital says, I think people have just paired certain feelings or sayings, certain things in philosophy. And some of those things are the same ones we produce when we say the right thing in well operationalized fields. Unconscious processing of thought. Not you too, Lance. Well, I think some stuff happens unconsciously. It has to. It doesn't mean I think that we have deep wells of personality deep below the surface, because I agree with Nick Shader about that. But unconscious stuff has to go on. Like if someone throws a ball to you and you catch it, you don't consciously process that. Yeah, East Kid says, I'm not sure why we are on moral intuitionism when I'm sure 100 years ago people have different intuitions that seem obvious. Yeah, this is something that Humer will say in his debates, is he'll say there's not that much moral disagreement. Yeah, but the issue with that is that what we have is a modern globalized culture where we mostly interact with people from weird populations. If, does Humer know about the moral values of people like indigenous societies in Papua New Guinea? Because I don't think he does. And do they have the same values as us? I don't know. That's not something that I or he could know just, from our everyday interactions. So I think that you get these selection effects. Imagine we lived on an island of only Catholics. It'd be pretty easy to say most people agree. Now imagine that imagine you're at a dinner table with someone from 1 century ago, 2 centuries ago, 3 centuries ago, all the way back to like ancient Egypt. And one person from each one of those centuries. Do you think those people would show remarkable overlap in their moral sentiments? Because I don't. You're going to have people, towards the tail end of that, and not that too far back, that would think it's perfectly natural and totally acceptable to own slaves. They just wouldn't. It's not just that they'd like guiltily do it. They would just be confused. Why would it be wrong? We captured them in war. Of course you could keep them. Like that would be the sentiment that they would have. And I don't like if we were like, it's the most evil thing ever. Like we feel that, but I think that they would just be like, why? This is normal. It's always been this way. Now we could be, and I would be as outraged as anybody else, but I don't operate under the illusion that people have shared the same values across society. And when you start thinking back deeper into the past, if anything, the moral values of people from, I don't know, the 1950s onwards in the United States, which is where Humer's from, are probably one of the least representative and most idiosyncratic set of moral values anybody in human history has ever had. There were headhunters in the 20th century. I don't know if they still exist. I don't think they thought what they were doing is wrong. And I don't think it's just a matter of non-moral values. I think that they genuinely were like, they just thought it was okay to kill other people. All right, let's have a look. Wow, we got the jokes today. So it says, might canine philosophers be too dogmatic? Hiroyuki Tanada says, I never thought I had seemings before I read Humer. I still don't think I have them. Cool. Finally caught up with the chat. Let's keep going.
An argument is valid. Now, you might be mistaken if someone comes and shows that you've made a mistake, but you only think it's a mistake insofar as it appears to be a mistake to you. Do you see what I'm saying? You can't escape.
No, I don't see what you're saying. It appears to be a mistake. There's certainly a sense in which I could say, yeah, that appears to be wrong. I take that language, when I use that language, to be like epistemic. I don't take it to be phenomenological. I don't take it to be a prioristic. Like I could say this table appears to be damaged or something like that. And that would be a perceptual error. But once I have internalized, say, the rules of logic, and let's say I screw up the validity of some argument, I present an invalid argument, and someone goes, that's invalid. And I don't initially see it, and they explain it, and they go, oh, it's whatever fallacy it is, it would turn out to be. And I go, oh, now I see it. It appears that I have made a mistake. That is not referencing the kind of intellectual seeming that Humer is talking about. That's not how I use that language. So I certainly use that language, but don't let Christian or Humer or others try to seize the language of seeming or appearing, which are used in everyday contexts, certainly in an epistemic way, if not in these other sorts of ways, and sort of smuggle their their philosophical framework into the matter, and then present you as somehow implicitly committing yourself to their perspective. No, I get to use ordinary language, and I can tell you roughly what I mean when I'm saying those sorts of things, and I'm not implicitly evoking their particular epistemic framework when I do that.
Phenomenal conservatism. Okay, Christian, we get it. You take appearances seriously, and then you believe the one that most appears to be true. Cool. Now, how do we use this principle to know these supposedly objective moral facts? The key lies in intuition. And intuition is a state in which something seems to be true that does not depend on other beliefs or inferences. And there are plenty of examples of things that we all agree.
So it seems to be true. So that's a problem for this conception of intuition. But also that doesn't, let's look at specifically what he said.
We know on the basis of intuition, such as the statement lies in intuition. And intuition is a state in which something seems to be true that does not depend on other beliefs or inferences.
How would you know whether your intuition doesn't rely on other beliefs or inferences? How would you know? Now, if you're saying it doesn't rely on conscious appeal to other beliefs or inferences, fine. But isn't it possible that unconscious beliefs and inferences are playing a role in one's intuition? This is not a good account of intuition because it commits Christian to a conception of intuition that has significant psychological cognitive implications. It would mean that we have a capacity to, and sometimes do, make judgments about what, or inclinations, whatever, something seems to be true, whatever that means psychologically, which is already a problem. But that these states, whatever they are, otherwise, they also specifically include that the state is not formed on the basis of a belief or an inference. How would he know that? Because whether your inclinations, your intuitions would be based on a belief or, what was the other thing he said? A belief or inference may not be introspectively accessible to you. So if it's not introspectively accessible to you, how can you be so confident that it's absent? I think the answer is you couldn't be. And so we would, in order to know whether these intuitions are occurring and do occur in any particular cases, we would already need to do empirical data. Does Christian have the empirical data to show that we have these seemings that don't involve inferences or beliefs? I doubt it. I don't think he has that kind of data. But even if those kinds of intuitions were real, like even if there were intuitions, right? So inclinations to believe things or a seeming that something is true that is not formed on the basis of an inference or a belief, how in any given instance would you know? So there could be instances where something seems true and it is formed on the basis of an unconscious belief or inference. And then another case, you have a genuine intuition that's not formed on the basis of a prior belief or inference. Introspectively, what's the difference? I think the answer is there wouldn't be, because the difference between them is one that falls outside of introspective awareness, whether it's the product of an inference or a belief. So like if someone asks you, do you think so-and-so, like, hey, could a Chihuahua defeat a T-Rex in a fight? It's pretty easy to say yes. No. No, it couldn't. Why would I say yes? You'd no pretty quickly. Now, when I make that judgment, presumably it's made on the basis of beliefs, but I didn't consciously think through or make any inferences. I just immediately, Chihuahua, T-Rex, Chihuahua's going to lose. Now, I have a bunch of beliefs related to that matter, and those are very likely what's causing me to make that judgment. So when it comes to a person giving their response to the trolley problem or some other sort of case, how would they know whether their beliefs or inferences that they're making aren't playing some role in the judgment that they then express on the matter? How would they know? Because it doesn't have to be introspectively accessible. So this is a bad definition of intuition. It's subject to pretty serious problems where, in order to establish that one has intuitions of this kind, one would have to do empirical work to show that these occur. The second problem is that even if they do occur, whether or not one is having an intuition in any given case would not be introspectively accessible to them. So then in any given instance, we wouldn't know whether we're having an intuition or not. You would need to like hook people up to an fMRI or something like that in order to find out whether they're having an intuition. So let's call things seeming true on the basis of unconscious inferences or beliefs. Let's call them cognitive judgments. Okay, So, and then intuitions are where something seems true, but it's not formed on the basis of prior beliefs or inference. Okay, so I present you a novel thought experiment. You say, yes, the person would survive, or no, I wouldn't pull the switch, or whatever. And then I ask you, okay, so you had an intuition about it? The only appropriate response would be, I don't know. How would you know unless we did prior empirical work? Like, what if we do empirical work and we find out that people's responses in these cases 99% of the time don't involve inference or belief? Okay, fine. Now you could say it's probably an intuition. But until we've done work like that, and unless we do work like that, the distinction between whether one is having an intuition or not is going to be a difficult one to answer if you don't have statistical information. And you might have statistical information that doesn't help. What if 50-50? Right? Because now I don't know, 50-50 chance that I had an intuition right now. And yet philosophers don't talk like that. They just talk like whenever they report an intuition, they're absolutely certain it's an intuition. Why are they so sure it's an intuition and not something else? How do they know inference and belief wasn't involved? How do they know? I don't think they have good answers to that. So this is a bad definition.
And there are plenty of examples of things that we all agree we know on the basis of intuition, such as the statement, nothing is both entirely red and entirely green, or every...
Yeah, see, I don't agree. So I don't agree that I know that nothing is both entirely red and entirely green on the basis of an intuition. That's a result of me having had prior experiences of things. Like if something is if it's all one thing, it couldn't be some other thing. That is based on an inference. That is based on prior experience. I don't agree that that's an intuition, given how he's defined the term.
Thing is identical to itself. There's nothing.
No, everything is identical to itself is not something an ordinary person has ever thought about. It's something you learn in philosophy, and you're told, yeah, no, totally, this is true. And maybe you'd be given some proof for it, or you'd talk through it, or whatever. This is not something that I think we know without reasoning. I think it's something that we reason through. So I don't agree with Christian about this, and I don't think he's presented any good evidence. He's just asserting that this is the case. No evidence, no arguments. He's just declaring that these are the results of intuitions. Well, okay, so if he could declare it, I could declare otherwise. No, they're not. I sincerely don't think that they are.
Nothing spooky about this. Similarly, there's nothing...
Here's a tip. If you have to tell people there's nothing spooky about something, there's probably something spooky about it. Like, it makes me think of somebody that's like, just imagine a guy asking a woman on a date, and he goes, hi, can I get your number? I'd love to go on a date sometime. And I'm not creepy at all. I don't do anything creepy. I'm not weird or creepy at all. That motherfucker's creepy, right? So, philosophers have to go out of their way to say there's nothing spooky about this because there's something spooky about it. I think that people's intuitions that there's something spooky about this characterization of intuitions, and I mean intuition in the vibe sense, in the ordinary sense, is spot on here. This feels spooky because it is spooky.
Spooky about knowing moral truths in the same way. Some examples of ethical intuitions that are self-evident would be suffering is bad, all else equal. If an action is wrong in one...
It's self-evident. Okay, no, it's not. No, it's not. How is that self? Also, how did he get from intuition to self-evident? That's a much stronger claim. He just threw that in there. No, it's not. So there we go. I don't have an intuition that it's self-evident. It doesn't seem to me that suffering is bad. Also,
one circumstance, it's also self-evident, would be suffering is bad.
What does he mean by bad? Does he mean and what does he mean by suffering? So if we say suffering are states that one prefers not to have, and if we understand bad in a subjective term as things inconsistent with one's preferences, then it would be trivially true. It'd be a tautology to say states a person doesn't want to have are states that they don't want to have. So that's how I would unpack that. How is he unpacking it? Is it self-evident that suffering is intrinsically bad or stands independently bad? He doesn't say. And in that case, those are certainly not self-evident to me. I don't think those claims are true.
All else equal. If an action is wrong in one circumstance, it's also wrong in other similar circumstances. So here's the conclusion you've
no, I mean, it's not persuasive. I don't have much more to say about that.
all been waiting for. Given that we do have ethical intuitions...
Where the fuck did he prove that? Given that we have ethical intuitions. When did you prove that, Christian? Where's the evidence people have ethical intuitions? When? And where's we'll see what's the content of the intuitions?
The principle of phenomenal conservatism states we should take these things to be true unless someone can come...
Okay, so ethical intuitions. Is it that we have intuitions that things are stance independently wrong? Because my judgments on ethical matters are thoroughly subjective. And so if I take them to be true, okay, so I should be a subjectivist until I'm presented with adequate defeaters. Great. You haven't presented adequate defeaters, so I'm justified in being a subjectivist given phenomenal conservatism. Christian is here just helping himself. He's not being explicit about stuff here. He's not being explicit about the stance independence of the realism here. Oh, if you think things ethically are true, stance independently true, why not be explicit? Why not be clear? It's not difficult to be clear. So he's doing something, he's doing his audience a disservice here, because if he wants to say, if you have realist intuitions, the intuition that certain things are stance independently wrong, on phenomenal conservatism, since it seems to you that that's true, you're justified in believing that's true in the absence of defeaters, fine. Why not say it that way? Because that's a much clearer, more precise way to say it. The way he's saying it makes it unclear whether he's talking about normative moral claims or the meta-ethical component associated with the normative moral claim. He's just mixing up normative and meta-ethical claims by just utterly failing to disambiguate them. This is unclear, it's poorly presented, and I'm disappointed. All right, let's have a look at that chat. Yeah, Jeremy is picking him on the similarity. Yeah, similarity is similar in what respect would be. There's a lot of questions you could pose here, and he's glossing over way too much.
Around and give a stronger reason for disbelieving these intuitions. And there are two common reasons given for why we should disbelieve these ethical intuitions. The first is there's no way objective morality.
Yeah, he's helping himself to the presumption, like the ethical intuitions of what? Is Christian assuming people have realist intuitions? That's an empirical claim. He's presented no good empirical evidence for this. I don't think he's presented any empirical evidence for this, much less good evidence.
It could be true given there's so much disagreement. And the second is that ethical intuitions seem to be explainable by evolution. And it is these two objections that I'll respond to in the next one. All right, let's say
I'm not really interested in those, so I'm not going to engage with those. I'll skip over those videos. Let's see what else we got. Is morality like math? Aliens prove objective morality. That sounds horrible. Is that it? All right, let's finish these.
What makes math true? See, this question subtly contains the main issue I have with objective morality. Let me explain. In any other domain, if you want to say some statement is true, there's a world in which those statements correspond to. So for example, if you're saying the mug is on the table, what makes that statement true, if it's true, is that there's a world in which there's a mug and there's a table and they're arranged in a certain way. And that's it. So what underpins this question, both for mathematics, is what's called the correspondence theory of truth. And it's basically saying that if a statement's true, they have to be true about something. There needs to be some object, whether it's abstract or concrete, that grounds these statements. And it's precisely this correspondence theory of truth that has driven a lot of philosophers to think Platonism is true, that these like mathematical objects actually exist, which otherwise would seem really spooky. But it's just taking this common sense view of truth seriously. Now, if you apply this to morality, what the hell?
This common sense view of truth? What does he mean by that? Is this a common sense view of truth? There is a little bit of empirical research on whether non-philosophers endorse the correspondence theory of truth, and it's not particularly promising. There's just no good indication that they even understand what this is supposed to be about. I view the correspondence theory of truth to be utterly trivial and a totally pointless analytic confusion. There's nothing to it. As for whether this is a common sense view, no, it's not. Yeah, and if it is, citation needed. You need to prove that, and no one has done that.
Makes these statements true? I don't know. I can think of a few examples, and I'll make a video on that another time. This series in particular was on Michael Huemer's argument in Ethical Intuitionism, arguing for objective morality. Now, does this mean that there's no objective morality? No. It seems reasonable to think that suffering is bad is an objectively true statement. But I still would like...
What did he say?
...is bad is an objectively true statement. But I still would like to see an objective morality? No. It seems reasonable to think that...
It seems reasonable. God, this stuff about seems... No, Christian, it doesn't seem reasonable. It actually seems insane. It's one of the least reasonable things anybody could think. Do you find that compelling? I'm guessing you don't, because you don't care how things seem to me. I don't care how things seem to you, and I don't know why anyone else should. Who cares how things seem to you?
That is an objectively true statement.
Ugh.
But I still would like to see an account of what grounds these statements. So the other option is to reject the correspondence theory of truth and to say, like, some facts just are, and reason
That's not the only option. There's a pragmatic conception of truth. Some facts just are.
gives you
That
access.
doesn't even sound like a good characterization of deflationary conceptions of truth. Is that what, if that's what he's going for? There's deflationary views of truth. There's pragmatic views of truth. There are alternative conceptions of truth besides correspondence theory, and they're all better than correspondence theory. Correspondence theory is the worst of the lot.
To these facts. But I don't know. For me, that's pretty unsatisfactory. Anyways, I'm going to be pressing Michael Huemer on this exact issue and a bunch of other small gripes.
He's still playing Grimes for some reason. I don't understand why. Okay, so let's look up what proportion of philosophers actually endorse correspondence theory. Ah, it's a slight majority. That's disappointing. So here we go. You could see here that it's about half of them endorse correspondence theory. Really, a quarter of them accept correspondence theory, and then another quarter lean towards it. Then you have a quarter accepting or leaning towards deflationary theory. You can see not too many explicitly endorse it. You have epistemic view. I'm not actually quite sure what that refers to in this context. Then you have these alternate views. And mine would be here in the 5.5%. It would be some pragmatic view. Okay. And we got their last video.
If we've been visited by aliens, objective morality is true. So I just saw Disclosure Day, which had some of the worst acting I've ever seen in my life. But let's put that aside for a second. Let's just humor Spielberg for a second. Like, okay, let's say that's true. What actually follows if aliens have actually visited us? There's a bunch of explanations. Here's one that I want to focus on because I think is fun. If aliens can visit us, they could clearly just wipe us out. Why haven't they? My contention is that they haven't done so because they are moral beings. And one possible reason for not wanting to wipe out complex life is that you recognize that conscious life is valuable. But not just that, diversity of types of conscious creatures is valuable. This would be in line with two things. Number one, there's been a steady progression of moral progress since the dawn of time. The moral circle has progressively expanded to include more and more conscious creatures to the point where now philosophers are starting to talk about, should we care more about bugs and cells? And like, what about AI in the future? Maybe it'll be sentient. And this is a general argument that's been raised by philosophers like Peter Singer and Jeff Sebo, who, by the way, I'm going to have on my podcast in about a week. It's also in line with a recent draft by philosopher Will McCaskill, where he tries to solve one of the thorniest problems in moral philosophy, which is called the repugnant conclusions. But basically, he's arguing what actually matters is diversity of types of conscious experiences. Oh, there's a couple threads here we could pull and weave together a story that say, hey, maybe aliens aren't touching us because they're picking up on a true moral fact, namely that consciousness is valuable and diversity of conscious creatures is valuable. If that's true, and there's convergence on this, that's support for objective morality.
Here's an alternative. The reason we haven't been destroyed by aliens is because aliens haven't come here. That's it. I don't have much to say about this. That was almost unserious. If you wanted to lay out an argument for moral convergence, like the best explanation for why human society has converged on shared moral values is that they've come to recognize the moral truths, that's fine. It's not a good argument. There are better alternative explanations. The standard alternative would be to, there's a couple things you could point to. One would be the reductio, pointing to how globalization and global trade and the homogenization of culture and colonialism and all that stuff, the exportation of capitalism and consumerism around the world has led there to be McDonald's everywhere. People all over the world have converged on eating fried chicken and cheeseburgers and drinking Coca-Cola and wearing blue jeans. It's not evidence of gastronomic realism or fashion realism. So as societies become more globally connected, people have become more similar. Certain societies have been, supplanted, wiped out, or eradicated. And so what you're getting are osmosis and selection effects, and people become more similar over time when they're exposed to one another. To give you a simple thought experiment, imagine that there's two societies separated by a big mountain range or a big river or whatever, big geographic barrier. They develop independently for 5,000 years. Their languages would be utterly incomprehensible to one another. Their cultures would be different. They might look different, dress different, build different, act different, have different levels of development. The river closes, the mountain range collapses, the geographic barrier is gone. What would you expect to happen after 1,000 years? I would expect one of the cultures to wipe out the other culture, and so everybody's more similar, or for the cultures to fuse and become more similar to one another over time. When cultures interact more, they become more similar over time. What's happened in the world? People have become more similar over time. Not a surprise. That's not good at it. So a better explanation for people converging is simply that people become more similar due to mundane, sociological forces associated with globalization and trade and interaction and cultural transmission and that sort of thing. These are boring, mundane explanations. Before you go invoking moral realism, you'd want to be sure that those couldn't do the job of explaining it, and they can. So these convergence arguments are not particularly good. Framing it in this way, maybe that was just for fun or to be entertaining to his audience. That's fine. I don't appreciate it. Okay, so that's it for the Christian videos, I think. He's got one on disagreement and one on debunking arguments. I don't care about debunking arguments, so I'm just not that interested in talking about them. Oh, here's one more video. Oh, it's like 2 seconds and it's more Grimes music. I don't get it. Okay, that's a weird message. Just why? I'm not going to put that up here. All right, everybody. That's it, I think. Any last questions, comments, stuff that's not weird? I'll find another video to review. I think this is just going to be stream week, I guess. By the way, there's a video game I'm going to be trying out. Would anyone want to watch me stream that and talk to them while they do it? Pull a Destiny or something? And I'm also going to reach out to Matt Dillahunty probably today. Cool. All right. Will you ever do an Elysium stream, Lance? I don't think so, because that I think requires more immersion and more direct engagement with the game. I might do it anyway, but I wouldn't be able to like multitask while doing that. It's not a great game to do that with, because the game, I want to be in the game. I love Disco Elysium. It's one of my favorites of all time. I'll give my top list. I was talking about Tactics Ogre. Some people talked about it on Twitter. They're like, Lance is talking about Tactics Ogre. Someone said something about a recent remaster. The remaster is like 3 years ago. So, and it wasn't just remaster the graphics. They updated the graphics a bit. They changed gameplay, and they did it in a way that I didn't like. So, and I know some of the original design team was on it. I'm sorry, I didn't like the game. They added this random element to it that I really didn't like, with these like cards that give random buffs. I didn't like that. I like the game to be, based on my decision of where to move and all that stuff. I think they removed the elements affecting how you're positioning too. Didn't like that. I think so. I don't remember. And then the major thing is random encounters. I really like the random encounters, and I didn't like them replacing it with this like forced training thing. Largely because I like to go back over all the maps. I like to play. It gives the game a lot of replayability, and I think my first playthrough is 400 hours. I loved it. So I hope that someone can create a mod that restores fully the random encounters. My suggestion for Atlas or whoever makes the game. So you may be aware of Felsier Arbiter's Mark. And what they did in the game is, instead of having forced random encounters, because it's annoying, right? So you're trying to go through the map, go to one area to go to a store or something like that, or for a quest or whatever it is you're doing. And you get stuck having a little random skirmish with like 3 stupid enemies that have no hope of beating you. You don't have to do that. Get rid of random encounters, but keep the whole random encounter table. This is what Felseal did. They just made it so that when you're in a particular location, you could patrol, and then it prompts you to get into a fight. Or just make it options. Have an option of random encounters. You could turn it off. Option of having patrols, or turn it off. Give people options when especially if you're remastering a game. That code and data and all of that stuff was already done. The loot tables, the random encounter tables of like which monsters you fight in which areas. It took more work to get rid of it than to just keep it. So you went out of your way to remove features from a game. That's not good. The simple solution would be this: get rid of the encounters being random. Just make it so the encounters are optional. You could also make it so that they're random, but you could decline the encounter. There's all sorts of ways you could do it where people aren't forced to be annoyed by the inconvenience of having random encounters without really having them. Basically, you could make it so that if people want them, they have them. If they don't want them, they don't have them. And then just keep your new training method too. it's best of both. Like, I'm not saying the new thing is bad. I'm saying you didn't have to get rid of the good thing, the original thing to have the new thing. Also, in the game, you persuade enemies in random encounters, and I love doing that. It's a good way to get spells from enemies. There's a random encounter in I think the last chapter where you could get more versions of the Petrify spell, which is normally not available in stores. I really like that. I like getting a Gremlin early on. They have very low hit points and they're pretty squishy, but they have some really great abilities. They get like charm and stun stuff. I think, is it stun? I can't remember. They have like life suck. They have some really cool abilities, and I just find them as a really good battle, like control of the battlefield. They get up really quick, and you could disable a mage or them or something. They're cool. Gremlins are cool in the game. And I always like to have a goblin in my party. I've always been sympathetic to goblins, so I like getting one of those. So yeah, it's a great game. But yeah, take some cues from Fell Seal because it's a good game too. Other games I really like. So the original Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I'm on the fence. I typically will say I like Baldur's Gate 1 more, but I recognize Baldur's Gate 2 has better features. I think part of the reason I tend to say Baldur's Gate 1 is better than Baldur's Gate 2 is because I always now play Baldur's Gate 1 modded with all the perks, like dual wielding and the kits and all the stuff from Baldur's Gate 2. So you have mods that basically plop Baldur's Gate 1 into the Baldur's Gate 2 like engine and system. And it's just incredibly good. The reason I like Baldur's Gate 1 better is I like the open world exploration. And although Baldur's Gate 2 did a fantastic job with putting you in a city landscape, I really like the wilds. I just love walking around the wilderness. There's like random bears and stuff and caves and all along the Sword Coast in Baldur's Gate 1. Atmospherically, it just wins. But as far as plot, character development, items, gameplay, combat, how advanced it gets in Baldur's Gate 2, there's nothing beats that. It's just incredible. And I've gone back and I've replayed these games every few years, like a little sojourn back home. And every time I'm like, holy crap, do these hold up? I also love the Fallout 1 and 2 before it was taken over by Bethesda and then later Obsidian with Fallout New Vegas. By the way, Obsidian is back and they're working on the next Fallout game. So that's exciting because Fallout New Vegas was a banger. That was a fantastically awesome game. Oh my God. And the DLCs for that were just ridiculously good. What that one where you travel to that faraway place with the guy with the bandages? I can't even remember anymore. Oh my God. That was so good. That story, that character, that environment was just really cool to be in. Oh, such a good game. But 1 and 2, I love them. But they're a little rougher in terms of the interface and the way party members interact. Baldur's Gate is a little smoother. But they're just great games. They're great. So Fallout 1 and 2. One that I discovered recently, it's like Arcanum what is it called exactly? It's a steampunk one made by the same people. It has a very Fallout vibe. One second, I'll pull up. Steamworks, Magic, something or other. Let me get GOG open and have a look. Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. So this game is very similar in feel to like Fallout and Baldur's Gate. It's like an open world, very similar kind of thing. I think it feels more like Fallout. And I got that recently and I played through that. Oh my God. I mean, first of all, it's ridiculously long, but second, it's such a big world. It's so cool. Oh my God. And it's just somehow I passed over that my whole childhood. It's an absolutely phenomenal game. I did end up making, so I made a character that I rarely do this, but I was like, I'm just going to have fun with it. And I saw that, yeah, I looked up a little bit online about how many characters you could have in your group depends on your charisma. So I was like, all right, I'll pick the damage spell that people say is good, which is like this like harm touch or something. You just go zap, zap, zap. But other than that, I just pump the charisma to the maximum. And the only thing my character does is get party members. So if anything gets near me, I could like zap, zap, zap. But mostly I just have my party just beat the crap out of everything. And it made the combat trivially easy because I have this massive party with my super charisma. I don't know if that's supposed to be a super strong build in the game, but it's working for me. So there's that. As far as new games, Disco Elysium, it's really, I don't think there's not much gameplay dynamics. There's not like difficult combat or anything. It's in terms of the ambience, the story, the dialogue. It has the best dialogue I've seen in a game. It's funny and dark and weird. I mean, it touches everything I want out of a game. I like the weird, like Lovecraftian type stuff. I like the dark, tragic type stuff. I like the funny stuff, and it combines them all in a way that's like comma tragic storytelling that's like better because of the dynamic way that they set it up, where you are actively embodying this character. It wouldn't work as a movie or a TV show. It works as a game. And it's a game that tells a story about this washed up detective who's just a horrible drug addict who's gone through really horrible experiences. Oh my God. It was a transcendent experience. It was so good. And the ending all the way through is, I'm not going to give any spoilers at all, but it's so rewarding. It's so funny and weird. And oh man, it's good. Oh, it's good. I don't even know how to describe how good it is. It's not for everybody. Some people are going to go in there and they're like, I want to smash shit. So look, I love me some Diablo 2. I want to just smash shit, sometimes. I love that. A necromancer all the way with the skeletons all running around killing everything. I love it. So I love those games too. But man, if you want a good story, Disco Elysium is where it's at. If you like that kind of stuff that I've described. Yeah, I do remember in the game, I based most of my stuff on like intellectual abilities and not very much physical abilities. And there's a point where you could like try to do like a karate kick or something on this guard. And I had I don't know what it was. It was like a 17% chance of success. It's some really low chance. And I was like, fuck, let's do it. And and it worked. It was one of the rare cases where you're low chance of something pulling it off. And my guy just does like a spinning roundhouse and like kicks the guy in the throat, or whatever the hell it was. It was some cool move I did. He just hilariously, just incredibly pulls off this like flamboyantly awesome move. And it was very, very funny. But here's one of the things about that game. You will fail a lot in the game and you could still progress the story. And the failure is just as funny and awesome and rewarding, unless it causes the game over to happen. But frequently it's really fun to fail in the game. And that's one thing because I'm a perfectionist. I don't like to fail at stuff and I want to reload and get it all perfect. And that was something I had to accept. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to reload every time when I screw something up. And at the beginning, I just didn't have the ability to handle a dead body, and my character just kept vomiting, and I couldn't do it. And it was awesome that how the story progresses when you're unable to do it. It's a great game. Kenshi. Oh man, that's a cool game. That is such a weird game. That'd be hard to watch on a stream though. The aesthetics need some work. Well, I shouldn't say the aesthetics. The aesthetics are great. The art design is really, really, really good. The graphics, the colors are so washed out that it's hard for me to see things. And so that makes the game a little tough for me. It's part of it. Part of it is probably I have some visual difficulties. All right. Random comments. Hiroyuki Tanada says, do you think there's something like a correct way to use a word, or is there only a statistical fact about how people use words? There's correct relative to normative standards. So yes to that. And then are there statistical facts too? Yes. So I don't think there's like a stance independently correct way. All right. Depends what game. So, wrong thing. How did it get up to there? Somehow I scrolled up without realizing. The Pale. Yes. Hey, no spoilers. Oh yeah. Planescape Torment. I never finished that. It's one that I finally got around to replaying. I didn't play. I played a little bit when I was younger, and gave up on it. And then I started again later. It has all the hallmarks of being kind of similar to Disco Elysium in terms of similar in some ways, like really good writing, but it's totally a different vibe. That seems incredible, but I didn't finish it. I don't know why. Very, very, very good. Class-based quest lines so class-based quest lines in Baldur's Gate 2. I started out as a cleric ranger my first time through, and that was a little bit, I think it's kind of a bit of a bug. So rangers get spells off of the druid spell list, but they have to be higher levels, and they cap out at like level 5 or 6 out of 8 or 7 levels of free spells. They stop at 5, I think. So anyway, basically rangers get a little bit of fighter, a little bit of rogue actually, because they get stealth and stuff, and then they get some of the druid spells. But druids lean into the spell casting. They're the nature priest class. If you take cleric ranger, it gives you access to all the spell levels of the cleric, but then it just adds all of the druid spells to that list. So you basically get to be a druid for free. So I exploited that. I think they've removed that in some mods and stuff. Yeah, they have. But I really love that. But later on, I've played a fighter mage cleric, like just triple class, which is Yeah, you don't. I think you miss out on some of the high level abilities. I love Berserker Mage and Kinsai Mage. Kinsai Mage is probably my favorite class. You got to dual class that. It's a little complicated. But and also there's a mod where if you're multi-classed, you get to do the quest for all of them, because normally the way it works is you get to do the first class-based quest for like a stronghold. So let's say you're a fighter mage. There's a fighter stronghold you could get, and there's a mage stronghold you could get. Whichever one you do first, you don't get like the Valigar or whatever his family. You get that planar sphere thing. Whichever one you do first, you can't get the other one, which I didn't like. So there's mods where if you're multi-classed, you get to do all of them. So fighter mage cleric, it's great because you get to do all three. And I remember the first time I did the cleric one, it was is it Natalia Diarnis? You go to her estate to like free. I remember fighting a troll and you get the flail of the ages there. It is a very vague memory, but I did that one. And the cleric line is really good. Like you have to go back, and you're like the lord of this place. And is it the fighter one? So you get as a ranger? No, the ranger gets something else. They get like some lodge or something. I can't remember. Anyway, I got that stronghold. And I remember the quest line for that being surprisingly good. There are subsequent games that are very much inspired by Baldur's Gate, Pillars of Eternity and Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. I don't think Deadfire performed particularly well. It's a great game. What I really like about Deadfire, first of all, they added multi-classing to it, and they did it in a really cool way that was the combat is awesome. It's a little more fast-paced than Pillars of Eternity 1. I like Pillars of Eternity 1 better, but Pillars of Eternity 2 puts you in a society with a culture and like a fantasy race that is more rooted in like Pacific Island culture than it is, and than like traditional European mythology. So and they get the aesthetics of it, and that world is just super cool. There's like pirates, and you go around in boats and stuff. You get a boat. It's a cool game. So those games are good. Yeah. Oh, right. So as I've mentioned, Zero Parades is okay. The Central Spy Thriller thing. Yeah, so Zero Parades, I believe, is a follow-up by some of the people involved with Disco Elysium, and I've heard mixed things. The Measure head kick. Yeah, I think that's it. Is that the guy that's called The Measure? Yeah, he's like on that top of the thing where the people are protesting down at the bottom. The racism theory guy. That's right. It was the guy that was like all about like what is it called? Like phrenology and physiognomy or whatever it is, like where he was trying to use people's facial features. Yeah. That guy deserved a kick. Spear says the new Warlock class. Yeah, I heard they added a class to it, but I haven't gone back and played Diablo in a long time. Not that long, but. Yeah, Grant says, I love Pillars of Eternity 2. The only knock on is the actual main quest is extremely short. It is, yeah. So I pretty much forgot about the main quest, just ran around doing stuff. But you could say the same about like Fallout 1. The main quest, if you want to do it, their speed runs were what people finished the game in like 5 minutes. So like if you want, I mean, there's a little cheese they have to do, but the main quest line in some games is often quite short. I mean, take a game like Skyrim. I guess it's not that short, but it's short enough that the game is not about the main quest. The game is about exploring and running around and stacking cheese. I didn't know I wasn't the only cheese stacker. So in Skyrim, I had a mod where you had like a really big house, and I had a storage room, and I became obsessed. I don't know why I did this, with stealing all of the cheese in every city and every location, everywhere in the game. And then I very carefully was stacking it. I had all the blue cheese wheels, the blue cheese wedges. I just had to stack them. And I wouldn't say I spent more time stealing cheese and stacking it than like exploring, but it was an unconscionable amount of time wasting. It's quite embarrassing that I've spent hours of my life carefully arranging virtual cheese. I'm not proud of that. That's kind of ridiculous. Measurehead. Is that him? Yeah, Measurehead. That makes sense. Phrenology guy. Barta says Lance is a bigger video game enthusiast than I thought. Interesting. So the game that well, I'll say more about it later, because I don't want to get ranting on that for too long. I feel like I've talked about games a bit too much. You might have noticed I mostly play PC games. I think pretty much every game I mentioned is PC except Tactics Ogre, which now is a PC game. What do I got on here? I'll just go through my video game list. I don't have a ton of them. I've never been super wealthy. Let's see. Age of Decadence, I haven't played through, but I started it. Seems pretty good. Arx Fatalis seems really good. I haven't played through it. What else we got here? I never played Deus Ex, and I regret that. Now, I feel like I can't really get into it now. Oh, Icewind Dale 1 and 2, those are good. I mean, they're nothing. I shouldn't say nothing. They're not as good as Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, but they're a fun romp if you like that play style, like that type of combat stuff. So those are good. I played the original Neverwinter Nights. It's all right. It's kind of underwhelming compared to the 2D ones. I never played Knights of the Old Republic. I have it, and it's just been sitting in here forever. Xenonauts, that was all right. I like that. I found certain aspects of it a little repetitive and a little frustrating. I'll tell you, maybe I'll get some hate for this. I didn't really like The Witcher 3. Good graphics, good storyline, lots of good stuff. Didn't like the combat. After playing the game for a little while, I eventually was like, I don't want to do the fights in this. And I stopped playing. Just didn't like the combat. Okay. Oh, Kingdom Come Deliverance. That's incredible. I never played the second one. I felt like I needed to finish the first one and never did. All right, what else I have? After I finish this, I'm getting out of here. I'm here to do metaethics, not to talk about video games. Mostly played board games these days. As far as those go, I quite like Stratego. I don't think it gets enough love. I suck at chess, and I don't think I'll ever be good at it. I don't have the patience to try to figure out how to get good at it. It seems like too much work. I don't want to study for hours and hours and hours just to play a game. Board games. Oh, it's a card game. Well, I played Magic the Gathering back in the day, so I could talk about that forever. I've been seeing the new stuff. They just came out with some Star Trek stuff. It looks pretty good. Magic the Gathering is great. I don't play any other card games, not like collectible card games. But a Coup is a cool card game. I like that. Coup is good. If you haven't played Coup, it's good if you got 4 or 5 people. Cheese stacking in Skyrim is irrational. Arx Fatalis, this is from says the pre-Dark Messiah, Might and Magic. Yeah. So before Dark Messiah, but Arx Fatalis is like, okay, so here's the thing in Arx Fatalis. You actually use the mouse. You have to learn the runes to cast spells, and you actually have to cast them. Like you actually have to drag the mouse in the right proper. It's absolutely awesome. One of the coolest game design. Like whoever made that, you are a genius. Praise to you. That is a very cool way to cast spells. Do I play FPS games? Not really, because I'm not good at them. I don't have that precision and aim and instincts and reaction time to play them effectively. I played PlanetSide, and then I played a bit more of PlanetSide 2, and I was usually like a stealthy sniper in those games. So yeah, I played those. I played a couple other FPSs briefly, but mainly PlanetSide. Timogen says, my guess is you play with a blue deck. So no, main colors I use were almost always black or black and green of some kind. I had a Living Death deck back in the day with Survival of the Fittest and stuff. I had this Shadow deck back in the day with Hypnotic Specters and Hymn to Torok, or Torach, I don't know how you say it. Order of the Ebon Hand. That was way, way, way back in the day. But those are always my preferred colors, is black and green. But you know, everybody uses all the colors as needed, depending on the circumstances. But yeah, not really a big fan of blue. Or, you know, I think if I ranked colors in the game in terms of my order of preference, it would be black, green, white, blue, red. Never super interested in red. So that would be, yeah, blue doesn't make the list very high. Puzzle Gaming Land sounds like a fun stream. Yeah, puzzle games. Portal is great. It's just you play it and then I'm done with it. So I wish there were more games like that. Maybe there are and I don't know about them. Jeremy says, hell yeah, Stratego's head and shoulders above other games of its era, especially for seriously played Scrabble board games since 1990. A whole different world, though. So yeah, Stratego's cool. I actually made my own Stratego board and my own Stratego pieces. So I got pretty into it. I got parts from like model train sets, and I got some stuff from Home Depot. And like I got like this sheet of like this really nice thick hardwood and I put a coating, like this thing on over the top of it, and I drew out my own. I don't know what I used to. It was like, it looks perfectly straight. I don't know what I don't remember what I did. I got really into making it perfect. And then I used, I made lumberjack pieces, and I had trees, and I had ice lakes, and I created like a winter Stratego board that was a 12 by 12 instead of a 10 by 10. So yeah, I made my own Stratego board. I was going to say, I still have it. I don't think so. I don't know where it went. I don't know where all the parts for it went. Temujin says, my order, black, blue, red, white, green. Black, blue, red, white, green. That's respectable. Fair enough. Black in the front. That's where it's at. I always like, I don't know why I like the black cards. I like the Phyrexians. I think they're really cool. Depends on what you mean by like it. There are room-to-room puzzle games, but also some genuinely neat indie puzzles. Yeah, someone recommended, and I still haven't got it, is Baba Is You. And maybe I should check that out, because they insisted that I watch them play it for like 3 or 4 minutes, and I was like, oh, this is neat. So might have to try that. It's been on the list for a long time. I don't know what Blueprints is. Randomness? I'm not a big fan of randomness. All right, what do I have in Steam? Oh, the Total War games. Am I an idiot? I played tons of those. Total War games are good. Bannerlord and oh, this would make my top 10. Mountain Blade Warband. I put an insane amount of time into that. It is an absolutely brilliant game. I'm honestly, I got to say, Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, I'm a little disappointed with. Yeah, they improved the graphics, but I was expecting a lot more out of it, and it was in early access for years, and it didn't fulfill the promise I was expecting of a greatly improved game in terms of dialogue and like city management dynamics and stuff like that. So I can't give it the full-throated approval. I recently played The Forest, which is kind of like a horror survival game, and that's an unusual genre for me. I enjoyed that. I played Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4. I didn't even finish Fallout 4. Honestly, I got bored of Fallout 4. A lot of people said it wasn't that great, and I liked it, but I wasn't blown away. I'm going through my list here. I got all the BioShock games and I never played them. That's stupid. I still have Mountain Blade downloaded, and I think I have the Lord of the Rings, one of the Lord of the Rings mods in it. I played a little bit of Civilization, a little too slow-paced for me. So my most recent Total Wars are Total War Attila, Shogun, and Medieval 2. Those Shogun 2 and Medieval 2. I think they're working on Medieval 3, but at Medieval 2, Shogun 2, and Attila are all excellent. The Total War Warhammer ones, I couldn't get into those. This is a fun one. This is something I was playing when I was on vacation and stuff, and I didn't have like a serious computer. It was Vampire Survivors. That's fun. And that's it as far as the PC games I got on here. I'm sure there's ones I've overlooked. The Stanley Parable, I see that there. That was good. Jeremy says, Blueprints involves drafting rooms in a mansion that resets every day after you get stuck or run out of steps, like roguelike in a very loose sense with a very, very deep story. Cool. Sounds good. Says Bob is used incredible. Manifold Garden. Feather and Fan says, hi everyone, it's my first time catching one of these. Well, I stopped talking about metaethics and I'm just talking about video games now. I don't know why. Things got to evolve over time. I've been doing the metaethics for years. I could start getting a little more chill. Okay. I think I'm going to call it there and get back to work. This has been a balm on my soul. It's helped me get my head back into things after I had a couple of weeks of chaos. So I'm going to get back to work. I got a paper to write on free will, so I'm going to get to that. But everybody, catch y'all later. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for everybody that stuck around while I was talking about video games. So I'll try to do a stream sometime. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be clumsy. It's going to be goofy. But I'll give it a shot, and I hope some of you will stick around for that and enjoy that. But I'm certainly not going to stop with interviews, debates, and all that stuff. It's been a bit slow this summer, and I can tell you why. well, part of it is that I had my daughter home, and if she's here, I can't be doing any of that stuff. I gotta focus on her. But we had some complications of getting the house, which we're hopefully moving into in a couple of weeks, and that's been occupying a lot of our time. So, and yeah, a lot of things I send people messages and they're not responding, or it's falling through, or they want to do it later. So, I wish I had somebody to help me get guests on the channel. Like I wish I had a manager, because if you throw a guest at me and you say, hey, they'll talk to you at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, I'll talk to them at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. The difficulty for me, the big barrier, is actually coordinating that, setting it up. Oh, one thing I should mention, by the way, everybody, you might notice, I don't know if you could notice, but I'm feeling better. And I don't want to jinx it, but and also it's super weird outside. It's like the sky is like, it's a goldeny orange outside. It's weird looking. I don't know what that means. It's weird. I decided, well, whatever. I'm really hitting the gym a lot lately. I'm trying to get more fitness. I had a couple of years ago, I was really struggling to get up and down. And, if I have a daughter and I can't even pick her up off the floor easily without going, and I'm not even 40 yet, that's bad. That's bad. And so part of it is for her, but honestly, part of it is for myself. Who wants to feel bad? So we go to the gym. I've been doing research on what sorts of like healthy things to eat. And I'm trying to get more fit and healthy, and it's been working. So lost a little bit of the belly, which you can't see here, but that's been going good. And it's really, the main thing is that just knowing that I'm working on my health has made me feel better, like psychologically. And that's been good. But yeah, the strength training for the win. So yeah, my dad's a big guy. My dad was a pretty serious bodybuilder. And, when I started going to the gym when I was younger, he showed me a bunch of stuff. And I've always known, I've had a pretty good sense of like how to lift, what to lift, when to lift, form and all that stuff. So I can do it. I just don't. And so, I've got weak, skinny arms. So I'm getting back. Not that I'm like the weakest person ever now, but I'm getting back in there. I'm doing it. And yeah. So that's been going well. I'm not going to talk about that topic on here. I don't really talk about applied ethical issues, but no, to answer your question, I'm not in favor of that. But I'm not going to get into a big discussion about that. Follow strength influencers. I don't think so. I don't have any problem against them. You got to be careful with the health influencer people. There's this guy on TikTok that debunks all these people, because there's all these people that are like, you don't want to eat this. You can't even pronounce the ingredients. And I'm a big fan of a very evidence-based approach to health and medicine. And the fact that you can't pronounce the ingredients on something does not mean it's unhealthy or dangerous, especially in moderation or in small amounts or something like that. So there's a lot of people that are like against processing foods or any kind of processed food. And look, yeah, it's good to have fresh food for a variety of reasons. But this idea that you should never have anything processed, or that, all processed everything is toxic and will kill you. I think people go too far with that sort of thing. And that there is a better approach to health that isn't just like Luddite, anti-modern world. Look, I'm against certain aspects of the modern world, and I'm in favor of other aspects of the modern world. We've got antibiotics. It's fucking awesome. So I don't think people should be reflexively anti-artificial or like artificial flavoring. Some of it is fine. It's not necessarily toxic. So a lot of people mistake natural for good or healthy, and artificial for bad or unhealthy, and that's a mistake. People shouldn't do that. But I'm not a health guru, but when I see these people debunking that kind of stuff, I like that. I like to see that. So those are good influencers. But you're going to get people that are like, oh, you got to have the blah, 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 and they just some stuff I started seeing since I started doing this is all these videos, clips and stuff about people saying, don't do the exercise this way, do it that way. And some of them are good. And then some of them, they're just saying you should never do a hammer curl this particular way. You should do it some other way. And they're both fine. It's like, well, I don't know why they're doing that. So yeah, some of it is kind of meh. So some of it, I think people are just pushing content for the hell of pushing content. In any case, I'm not here to talk about health stuff. So I'm going to get out of here. And damn, this house is hot. We don't have central AC here, and the heat is even penetrating the basement. And let me see. I don't even think it's especially hot out today. No, it's not, but it's hot. It's uncomfortable. Anyway, see y'all later. And oh, right, all the regular stuff. Like the videos, subscribe to everything. If you engage with Christian, because I'm not going to directly engage with Christian, because if he blocks me in Substack, I'm going to respect that. I'm not going to try to engage with him. So I'm not going to respond to him over on TikTok. He doesn't want to talk to me. He doesn't want to talk to me. You know, everybody is that right. But if you engage with them, if you go on TikTok and you leave a comment or you comment on the Substack, don't be an asshole. And I'm not saying that because I've never been a jerk to anybody. I have been. Even in this stream, I was about to mock him for something, and that was stupid and that was wrong. Don't do that. And I don't even stand by the sentiment that I was awful sentiment. So if you engage with him or anybody else that's a more realist or anti-illusionist about consciousness or views contrary to my own or whatever, or if you're arguing with people on my side and you disagree with me and you're watching the stream for that reason, there's no need for us to be jerks to each other. I mean, these are philosophical issues. They're abstract. These are not, we're not arguing about like serious matters of social justice. We're not arguing about contemporary political issues where there are serious stakes in lives. We're not talking about like immigration where there's like real stakes in play for people. We're not talking about any of that. These are abstract philosophical issues. There's no reason to be mean to each other. There's no reason to be jerks about this stuff. We should be able to get along and have great conversations. And that's what I want to cultivate, even though sometimes what I've said and done in the past and may continue to do is sometimes at odds with it. So just try to be respectful and productive with people. All right, everybody. Yeah. Focus on different parts of the muscle or avoids injury. Yeah, good. I don't want to talk about the health stuff. I don't want to put myself in the position of giving health advice to anybody. More people commenting on that stuff. Anyway, catch y'all later. Like the video, subscribe, do all that stuff. And if you don't see me for a week or two, how long do I have? I'll be around for about another week or two at most, and then I'm going to be gone for a few days because probably I'm going to have to pack up the computer and everything and have it all ready to go, and it's going to sit there for a day or two, and then we're going to move into the new house, and it's going to be just a day, 2, 3, 4, who knows how many days, because it's a whole new house. We're not moving apartments. We got to unpack all. You can't see the stuff all there. It's going to be a lot of work, and we're going to be doing that while managing a baby and while I teach, so I'm not having to go in, so that's going to help. But I'm going to have a lot of work to do. So you're probably not going to see me for about a week. And then who knows, maybe I'll be exhausted and want to take a break. So I might be gone for a couple of weeks. But hopefully we'll have some good things after that. I don't have a lot of stuff planned, so I'll have to go back to the drawing board. I've been looking at the Q&A from like a year or two ago, and I'm like, I really got to get to that list. Half of you are probably new people, and half of those people are gone forever, but whatever. Anyway, see y'all later. Where's the outro video? I got to find the out, and here it is. I want to say things are always being moved around, but no, it's just me being goofy because I've been here for 2 hours and I need some calories. All right, everybody. Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing. Yeah. So, well, see, I'm not going to talk about the health stuff, but I need some damn calories. Okay. See you later.